Hey, welcome back to the Her Hoop Stat podcast. I am Brian BMac Mackay, and I'm here with Brittany Carper on this fine Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Shout out to him and everything he stood for. And
Yeah,
go ahead.
I feel like I was looking today, this morning, like, man, how many different quotes could you post to honor MLK today? And it's just awesome. Like our two children are in kindergarten and first grade, and they come home and they're learning and sharing about that. And I just the impact that he still has today, and what he stood for is something that I don't ever take for granted, and I think it's awesome that we have a day that continues to honor everything he stood for.
Absolutely. And to have just a poor transition. Yesterday uh, was there was one for sure amazing game, and it happened to be the first game of the day between NC State and Louisville. NC State, Louisville winds up winning 88-80 in overtime. And I was just kind of looking over the stats this morning. Uh, man, um, NC State's big three: Brooks, Zam Jones, Camille Pierre. They all get 19, 20, 26 points apiece, but uh, shooting wise, it was just a rough day for all three of them. But they controlled the game for most of it, which was
Right.
crazy to me. Uh, then you have Amari Berry for Louisville, who just flat out went nuts. And let me transition to that up here. I can get her exact stats here. Yes, 33 points on 14 to 23 shooting, 12 rebounds, and it felt like down the stretch, it was every single offensive play was made by her for Louisville. What are your thoughts on the day?
Yeah, I mean, she was just an incredible piece off the bench for that Louisville team. And late, I thought, she was really good. And I thought really the key to that game, too, BMac, was Louisville had 21 offensive rebounds.
Mhm.
And so you're looking at a box score where maybe, either team wasn't super efficient, but when you look at that stat and then you look at how many more attempts from the field Louisville was able to have, I thought that was the big separator there. But just an incredible game from two really, really high level teams that I think are obviously going to be competing for that ACC regular season title. Would not be surprised to see them, facing off obviously in an ACC championship, conference tournament game either. I thought really late, Amari Berry hits those two free throws to tie the game, which was really big. And then, if you didn't have a chance to catch the broadcast, you heard, like we were talking about, Debbie Antonelli talking about how good Jeff Walls is, ATO, which is after timeouts. And, down 5, they ran that really good play where it's a long sideline pass,
Yes.
and then you're screening to the shooter. They banged the 3 there. And then I thought what was really the interesting piece that kind of changed what NC State was looking for was the switch to the zone defense late. And by doing that, you're just taken kind of out of rhythm if you're an offensive team. And you could tell NC State wasn't super confident attacking it. They had a contested 3. And then really the play of the game, which did not go in the favor of the Wolfpack, was the offensive rebound by Zoe Brooks. And at that point, I think maybe 16 seconds was left in the game. And instead of just backing it out there with a 2-point lead, she goes up for a contested shot in the lane. Louisville secures the rebound. They're fouled. And that was kind of that consequence of events there. Just a massive mistake. And like we said, it wasn't, obviously that play, wasn't the game. But in a situation like that, just someone who in Zoe Brooks has played so many high level games, so many pressure situations for this Wolfpack team, just a massive mistake of not understanding time and score there.
Yeah, and the coach in me just was screaming at the TV when she did it too. You just like, oh, what are you doing? Don't
Yeah,
back
yeah.
it out, back it out. You're just like coaching them from the couch, as we do, and it just I feel so sorry for her because that's. I mean, I've met her a few times over the last couple of years, and she's a really good kid, and I know she's probably eating herself up about it at this point. But man, such a just the game itself was just so, and you got to thank the NC State crowd. They were awesome. I mean, it was a packed house, and just you could feel it through the TV. Just every single big play was just met with just loud roar and just excitement. And what a win for Louisville to go on the road like that and take that.
Yeah, I just this Louisville team just keeps I think impressing people. They went into this season a little under the radar. Not I don't think the expectation was for them to be where they are right now. I mean, they're 18-3 overall, and just a team that I think what's really impressive about them is they can kind of have a different leading scorer every night, and that's really dependent upon maybe the matchup or who's in the rhythm that night for that team. But I mean, if you're going to get an Amari Berry off the bench that can produce and it be efficient in what she was too, that's scary because I think that makes this Louisville team even more dangerous than they already are.
Yeah, I mean, you got McKinley Randolph who could just explode at any moment, plays and moves exactly like her dad, just that old stiff, like old baller look.
Yep.
I mean, but it's so efficient and so, I mean, just the massive rebounds and putbacks and a player who did not shoot well yesterday, but has the opportunity to go off at any moment. Taj Roberts,
Yep.
I think she was like 1 for 9 yesterday, but she's another one that could get you 20 to 30 points any night.
Yeah,
And it's just
absolutely.
Laura Ziegler, the transfer. Oh my gosh, from St. Joe's, big time. Could be big time for them. They're scary. They're scary, because they could be a team that could win the ACC, get it to the tournament, and do some real noise.
Yeah, and I mean, and one of those losses, was to an undefeated UConn team in which it kind of got away from them early. They were able to cut it. I think it ended up being a 12-point loss, but they've had the experience of playing the top teams too. So I think that's just a team that throughout this, rest of this conference season, heading into the postseason, is going to get more confident and keep getting better and better.
Well, you spoke about UConn being undefeated. There's another used to be undefeated team out there. Texas Tech Lady Raiders went down Saturday to Kansas State, to a young Kansas State team, 65-59. I think the tale of this game for me, just I watched a little bit of the first half and all of the second half. Uh, the way they just defended and just hounded Bailey Maupin, made her work for everything. She still got 18 points.
Yep.
Didn't shoot well like she normally would. Jada Malone, they made her work for everything underneath. And Snooder Collins didn't shoot well at all. She had a poor shooting game, and the way that Kansas State was just hounding them on defense and just was all in their face and just make them work for every single thing they got. Um, Kudos to those young kids and that big win for them. And what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, I think it's a K State team, like you said. They have a lot of youth. They have players that have been in the program, but maybe not in the role, like a Taryn Sides that she's in now. And I think it's a team that took bumps early, and now you're kind of seeing them hit their stride. But right, they were just really good on the defensive end. I thought they controlled the tempo of that game. They held Tech to their lowest offensive output on the season, when coincidentally was their first loss. So you can maybe kind of see a recipe there going forward against this Tech team. But I also think, again, a really big piece was the offensive rebounding of
Yes.
K-State. They had 17 offensive rebounds. I thought Jordan Spicer, a freshman off the bench, was really good for them. And so I think that's a K-State team that you scratch your head with some of their losses, but they've also gone and won some games. So I think it's certainly we're going to see a lot of what Texas Tech is made of. I think they were riding this momentum of being undefeated. Certainly a team no one expected at this point in the year to still be undefeated outside of maybe their program walls. And so I think now it's what's their response, because they're now on the road out to BYU and at Utah, and in a league in the Big 12 where it really seems like almost any night a team could show up and beat you, no matter what the standings. Or I just think that's the way that league is this season. And so I'm very interested to see the response of this Texas Tech team after the first loss of the season.
Yeah, like you said, and I think we said this off air before we started. It was kind of like a situation where people were just waiting on them to lose. Like, okay, yeah, that's cute. They're undefeated. They're whatever. They'll get in the Big 12. Somebody will get them, and it, that's fine. It's happened now. I think like you said, they can learn from it, and improve. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. They got BYU. They got I think they have an Iowa State game coming up. I mean, it's tough in the Big 12. Um, but yeah, I think this is something they could learn from, and not let it define them. Don't let that one loss linger. Much like a team that we're about to talk about here with staying in the Big 12. Look at that! I can't do a transition. Boy, look at me making that transition work. No, but Iowa State. Um, just seems like they just are just on a struggle here. They've lost 5 in a row, starting with the loss to Baylor on January 4th. It's just not been a good year for Iowa State at this point. You have Addie Brown go down in that game, which they finally came out and made an announcement that she's out indefinitely. For the longest time, we didn't know, okay, is she game to game? What's going on? You want to be like asking Jamie, but you don't want to leave her alone too, because, there's the inside there that you don't want to mess with. Uh, but, so they lose her against Baylor. The next game against Cincinnati at Cincinnati, they lose the game and they also lose Ariana Jackson, another big shooter for them on the wing. And it's like it just keeps tumbling. Uh you go against West Virginia, lose there, lose at Colorado, and then yesterday they lose to Oklahoma State, where it just seems like every game to me I watch and Jada Williams, teams are just completely not guarding her at this point. They're just kind of completely backing off of her, doubling down, making Audie work for every single thing she gets. And she's still getting double figures, but you could just tell that it's wearing on her and they're just not getting enough from everyone else to subsidize the losses of Brown and Jackson.
Right. Well, I think if anyone has heard myself or Jamie talk on this podcast about what Addie Brown means to this Iowa State team, it hasn't been more evident than over the last 4 games in her absence. I think as a stretch four, she can obviously shoot the three. She can play off the bounce. She's probably one of the best post passers on that team, so able to give Audie the ball where she needs it. But obviously, her ability to shoot the three allows there to be more spacing on the team. And when that floor is constricted with her absence, that's kind of where you're seeing. And then not only that, but then that next game you lose Ariana Jackson, who at that point in the season was their leader in 3-point makes, arguably their best guard defender.
Mhm.
And so now you're having, two really, really key components of that Iowa State team out. And so what you're seeing is just they're daring the other players to beat them, because at this point they know that if we can limit Audie to, let's say 13 to 18 points or whatever that looks like, and hold in check the rest of that lineup, it's proven to be a successful recipe thus far. And I think that's something that obviously that Cyclone team is working to figure out. You're having players obviously struggling to score the basketball. And what does that look like? And so I think, injuries are one of those things that you hope never happen. And when it does, especially the impact that those two players specifically have on that Iowa State team. Now you're trying to see what that looks like going forward. And right now, they haven't found the successful recipe for that. But does that mean it can't happen over the course of the next couple of weeks? I don't believe that's the case. I think that team, that coaching staff, they've won too many basketball games. They understand, adjustments need to be made. And they probably need a game where they see the ball go in the basket and they get that confidence, because I think they have obviously players that are capable of making shots and doing those things. But what happens naturally to a player when you don't see the ball go in the basket is you feel the pressure, you get tighter, everything else seems so much harder. And so it's not only, are they not making shots, but they're also turning the basketball over. And so you have kind of a double-edged sword that for that team, they just can't really afford that. And so, I think Ariana Jackson is trending to hopefully make a return here sooner. And then you hope Addie Brown comes back to this team at a point in the season where she can still be impactful and help them, because they're a team, if they get fully healthy, no matter what the rest of this conference season looks like for them, nobody is going to want to see in a conference tournament, because we all saw, now maybe it wasn't the greatest competition or whatever, but let's not forget they beat an Iowa team that's currently sitting undefeated in the Big Ten at home, and we're up, 20 points in that game. And so sometimes it's easy to forget what they had done fully healthy because we're watching a really big struggle right now. But that's something that I think if they are able to return to full health, watch out for the Cyclones if that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's even more of a indication by how they have lost what 5 games now. I guess it was 3 or 4 before the last polls came out, and they were still 19th.
Yep.
Now that probably won't be the case this week, but that just shows you people know what this team is capable of when at full strength, and like you said, they're gonna be there in the Big 12 when they get everybody healthy, and they'll have a chance to win that. And I'm just looking ahead at their schedule. They got Cincinnati this Wednesday. They play Arizona at home on Saturday. Arizona, a team that played around with TCU. In fact, I was texting back and forth with Cindy Brunson during the game because she does their TV,
Right.
and we were going back and forth about this could be a game here, and I think we jinxed them because TCU winds up pulling away in the second half, but yeah, Arizona's another team. Becky Burke has really got something cooking game by game there in her first year. Then you have the Texas Tech matchup coming up next Wednesday. Oh, so it's not going to get any easier, but they get healthier. And like Audie said in that press conference that everybody keeps replaying all over social media, you don't want to be a monster in January. You want to be a monster in March. And
Yep.
they're a team they could be when they get fully healthy.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's easy to forget what, like I said, what teams have done when they're healthy, and injuries unfortunately happen. And I think the great thing that maybe comes from injuries is you get other players that can step up, maybe figure out roles where then when you do get fully healthy, you can, have more depth and opportunity, that if you are in those situations again, more prepared, feel more confident entering them.
Let's take it up to Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Lady Vols and Kim Caldwell are 5-0 to start SEC play. What do we make of them? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been pretty open on this pod that Tennessee's been a team that I think they've been disappointing up until they got into conference play. They were really hard to figure out. They were up and down. I think the style they were playing, they weren't necessarily succeeding in that, because to be successful, You have to turn your opponent over. You have to make shots. You have to be, efficient on the field, from the 3-point line, all the things that are successful in that kind of system that Coach Kim Caldwell implemented there. And then they come into SEC play and they, like you said, they start 5-0. But when you dig into that a little bit, I think we're going to find out more about this Tennessee team in their upcoming schedule. They haven't, I don't think, faced the meat of that SEC conference. And so, I think it's given that team confidence, which I think they needed. They've figured out some things. I think they've shortened their bench some. I think you're not seeing, maybe equal distribution of minutes like you previously had on some of those games in those teams. So I think I think they have Kentucky at home, which will be really interesting. I would expect Tiani Key still out for Kentucky. I haven't heard any differently there, but and then you're at an Ole Miss team where they've kind of been on that same roller coaster of they've had good games, they've had bad games. And so that'll certainly be an interesting matchup. And then they get Mississippi State, but then they go at UConn, at Georgia, who I think is a team that if they shoot the ball well, can be very scary, like we saw yesterday. And then they're at South Carolina. So in 2 weeks, I think we're going to be able to see what this Tennessee team is truly about and if they have hit their stride entering conference play.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the rest of their schedule. After that South Carolina game, they have Missouri. Then they have Texas at home, A&M at home, Oklahoma, at LSU, Vandy at home. Wow.
Yeah.
So as you want, quote unquote, less than the beginning of the SEC schedule was. It gets tough right here at the end, which, hey, that's like you said, we're gonna see what they're made of.
Yeah, and I think for that team, that's probably a luxury of the schedule that they started with because they needed some confidence. I think they needed to feel like, okay, this is what we can do to be successful. And so that's what's going to be really interesting with the games that they have coming up is that something they can sustain with, opponents that should test them more than what they've seen so far.
You brought this team up when we were talking about Iowa State, the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Hmm.
Last night, and like I told you before we started recording, I felt like they played their best game of the season against Michigan State. I mean, it was just everything seemed to be clicking. Addie Deal is playing like everybody expected her to play, being a 5-star recruit coming in as a freshman. She's starting to play that way. Ava Heidman is playing really good. Hannah Stalky is doing her thing in the
Yeah.
post. What are your thoughts on the Hawkeyes at this point?
They're a team that I feel like has just quietly gone about their business. And you look and they're 7-0 in the Big Ten. They're up there with UCLA. And so that's going to be kind of interesting. I think they haven't necessarily faced, the toughest of the toughest in the Big Ten, but they have a home win over Nebraska. They obviously had a home win over ranked Michigan State last night. And like you said, they have pieces that are starting to play better, and in notably Addie Deal. And that's a player, I think you said it, like a 5-star freshman. And
Mm,
sometimes people want freshmen
yeah,
to be
immediately.
just really good,
Yeah,
and it's just like and no matter what you tell a player, the speed, the pace, the physicality, everything is so different at the college level. And I think that's why, so many people could not have been more impressed with what Sarah Strong did last year as a freshman, because you don't often see that, because it's rare to be ready right from the jump and to seamlessly fit in and look like you've played college basketball for years, and so in Addie Deal, I mean, what a luxury for that Iowa team that, like you said, Hannah Stolke starting to kind of find her groove, play really good basketball. Ava Hayden has been phenomenal at the low post for them this year. And the player that I, talk about almost every time I talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes is Chit Chat Wright. And that's just a player that I think, again, has made this Iowa team kind of go from a team that, okay, yeah, I think they'll be in the middle of the Big Ten. We'll see kind of what they shake out to a team that I think is going to be definitely competing towards the top. And I think she's a big reason why. She's an efficient shooter. She can shoot the three. She handles the basketball. She runs that team really, really well. And I also think, you have role players in McCabe and Stremlo and Feuerbach that just understand kind of what they need to do to make that team successful. And so I think that's an Iowa team that, we're certainly going to find out more as the conference season goes on. But to start out 7-0 and to continue building that confidence and see the growth of those players, especially at this point in the season, is very promising for that Hawkeye team.
I mean, I know that this team that they're going to play on Thursday, Maryland, has had a bunch of injuries, and I think
Mhm.
it's finally kind of catching up to them a little bit. But after the way they were kind of handled by UCLA yesterday, Brenda Freeze is going to have them turned around, and that game Thursday night, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Iowa and Maryland. Um, Caitlin Clark's birthday, by the way. January, and the reason I know that is because mine is the next day. So
I love it.
22nd, 23rd, we're right there by each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Iowa and Maryland, that's going to be an interesting game on Thursday.
Yeah, and I think this is an Iowa team that obviously plays better at home, and going on the road is never easy, especially in conference. And like you said, coming up against a Maryland team that kind of got it taken to by UCLA, and so that Brenda Freeze will have that Terrapin team ready, and I expect that to be a really exciting matchup on Thursday.
Before we get out of here, I want to. I've been workshopping this for the past 2 days, trying to figure out what I want to call it. I think I'm gonna call it BMax buckets. And
Okay.
anytime you see me pop up on this podcast, when I give flowers, that's what I'm giving. I'm gonna give a BMac bucket to Wisconsin's Destiny Howe. Yesterday in a double overtime game, overtime win against Oregon, 46 minutes played, 39 points. Her field goals were 10 of 21 from the field goal, but all 10 field goals were three pointers, 10 of 16 from the 3-point line. And I just seemed like every time they needed a basket, she was there to give it to them. And so
Yeah,
I'm going to give her today's BMAC bucket to
I
Destiny
love it.
Howe.
I love it. Yeah, 10 3-pointers to help them, win that game over Oregon. And that's a Wisconsin team that I think, again, has been kind of up and down, but they've played some people close in the Big Ten. And certainly Robin Pinchton is kind of trying to put her stamp on that Badger program. And I say this often, there's not really easy nights in any of those top conferences because they're always ready, and I think the coaching is getting those teams prepared.
Well, Brittany, I really wanted to come on here today and be able to just give you just the greatest moment of the because I thought Caleb Williams was about to give y'all something last night. He made one of the greatest. In fact, I missed it because I was getting ready for bed and just doing all that, taking care of things. My brother calls me. Did you just? He used a bunch of expletives
Yeah, yeah.
in his excitement. Well, did you just see that? I said, see what? Caleb Williams just made the greatest throw I've ever seen in my life. So I go and I catch the replay and I went, wow.
Yeah,
It was almost like it was meant for the Bears to take it in overtime, and just didn't happen for them. But I know you're excited for the future of your team.
yeah, I think he was 26 and a half yards behind the line of
Mhm.
scrimmage when he made that pass that the Bears ended up tying the game. And, I think as a Bears fan, I said this last night, I'm bummed, but I'm not sad because I'm so excited about the future of the Bears organization with Caleb Williams. But more importantly, like I said this last night, I tweeted this out, like, it stinks when your favorite teams lose, but I don't know how people don't love sports because man, it's just like it's incredible to be invested in teams and players, and just they take you on such an emotional roller coaster that you never know what the outcome's going to be. But just thankful that I get to love sports, and I know the Bears will be back next year. But that's the beauty of it, is sometimes your team wins, sometimes they lose, but that was the most fun a Bear season has been in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, and I think it's because I started playing fantasy football years ago. I don't necessarily have an NFL team that
Mm,
I follow and root for. I guess you can call it the Saints because they're right next door to us
yeah,
in Louisiana. But yeah, but I can right along what you're saying. Ole Miss, my football team, they were so close, and
yeah,
just plays away from beating Miami the other night. They should be playing in this national championship game tonight. So I understand the whole sports thing. Like, man, because I was invested all throughout that game. Every play, I'm hanging on by a thread, and just that's what sports brings you.
yep.
I know
Yeah, it truly does, and that's the beauty of it is you don't know what it's going to be at the end, but in those moments, or for 2 hours or 3 hours, you're glued to every possession and every play, and that's what the beauty of it is. And let's not forget to tell people to tune in to three incredible women's basketball games today in the Coretta Scott King tourney. 11 a.m. we have Ohio State and TCU. 1:30 Michigan and Vandy. Vanderbilt is one of two remaining undefeated. So I'm very excited about that game. I think that's a game Michigan could possibly knock Vanderbilt off. And then it caps with Notre Dame at UConn, which I think outside of the conference, the Big East, UConn's test in Notre Dame and Tennessee is really kind of their last thing between that and the NCAA tournament that could possibly knock them off before then. So a great day of women's hoops, where hopefully people are able to tune in and catch that.
yeah, and one other game today out of the top 25 that's not going to be on any major platform. You have to go to ESPN Plus to watch it. Harvard at Princeton.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Ivy
forgot about
League.
that. It'll be a
I'm
great
giving
night.
one to Coach Helen Williams, throwing the Ivy League in there.
Yep.
That's gonna be another good matchup because that's two teams that honestly, if things shake out, they could both come out of the Ivy League and get into the tournament. They could both get in there, depending
Yeah,
on how
yeah,
things shake out everywhere else. But yeah, that's two more teams that it's gonna be interesting to watch. This that's got some really good games today.
yeah. Women's hoops always provides us.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we're here to talk about women's hoops. But yeah, but I think that's gonna be a wrap on our show today. Thank you all for listening. Please follow at her hoop stats wherever all your social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, X. Somebody did a great producing job of putting that on the bottom of the screen here so I could read it off as I go. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcasts, that's where you can find us on the daily. Brittany, it's been fun.
Always.